I don't need it. All right, there we go. Now I'm on. Welcome to Sonoma United Methodist Church. Today we gather not to grieve, but to celebrate the bright lights of God that took form as Alice. And we'll hear from a lot of voices, and a lot of musical notes, and a lot of imagery. And know that she valued every element of creativity. There were so many forms of expression that she engaged in. And this will be brought up again, but if you haven't already figured it out, Alice had either by herself created or in partnership with others created every one of these banners, and also the Heifer Project posters, which we'll talk more about later. And then in the reception hall is some of her quilts and stitch work. And I'm positive there's actually a warehouse somewhere that no one knows about that holds the rest of these things. But it is good to be together to celebrate Alice. So I invite you, though, to just be here and now. We are a diverse collection of people, some church members, some family members, some have volunteered or made music or sewn with her. We have folks from in town and out of town. It's a whole breadth of representation. And I'm glad that you are able to be here. And we actually even have people on Zoom joining us from who knows where on the internet. And we're glad you're here too, Zoomers. But let's take a moment and center ourselves. I invite you to take a deep breath in and exhale. Deep breath in, exhale. A deeper breath in and hold, knowing you are loved by God and welcomed here. Exhale. So, before my time as pastor here, this congregation did a project called Getting to Know You, Getting to Know More About You, where each member was encouraged to write their own autobiography. And this was back in 2011, so this is as far as that autobiography goes, but I want to read it to you, and these are in the words of Alice. And forgive me if I pronounce anything wrong. I was born in Orange, New Jersey. I had one sister 17 months older than I. My grandparents in Massachusetts had a dairy farm which we visited every summer. My grandmother in New Jersey had a vegetable farm. And my father helped on weekends and provided food for lots of relatives. Our church had a rabbi-minister exchange with the local synagogue. I met Claude at Drew University in Madison, New Jersey. He was in seminary and I was in the undergraduate school. We married in 1953. We served 2 churches in New Jersey before transferring to the California-Nevada Conference. We have 2 children, DJ and Carol, 2 grandsons, Trevor and Cameron. I'm going to edit, and now a great-grandson named Paxton. I have taught school, been a bookkeeper, and worked for Sonoma Medical Plaza for 15 years. I have been a volunteer, or I've been on volunteer and mission trips to Zimbabwe, Russia, New Mexico, and local churches in our conference. Most recently, I went to Lesotho, South Africa in February of this year. I enjoy quilting, cross-stitching, reading, and volunteer work at the church and at the Sonoma Valley Hospital for 30 years as of 2011. I know we will hear more parts of this story, but I think it's great that this church had the wisdom to preserve a first-person telling of their own lives. So if you are a part of a faith community or any kind of group, I encourage you to think about that kind of project. Have people tell their stories so we can hold them. Our opening hymn is found on page 593 in the hymnal, in the bit larger blue hymnal under your seat or near you. This, "Here I Am, Lord." And I invite you to stand as you are willing and able. Here I am, Lord. I, the Lord of sea and sky, I have heard my people cry, all who dwell in dark and sin, my hand will save. I who made the stars of night, I will make their darkness bright. I, the Lord of snow and rain, I have borne my people's pain. They turn away. I will break their hearts of stone, give them hearts for love alone. I will speak my word to them. Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold people in my heart. I, the Lord of wind and flame, I will tend the poor and lame. I will set a feast for them. My hand will save. Bread I will provide, till their hearts be satisfied. I will give my life to them. Whom shall I send? Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, when you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. Here I am, a cappella. Here I am, Lord. Is it I, Lord? I have heard you calling in the night. I will go, Lord, if you lead me. I will hold your people in my heart. Please be seated. I'd like to invite Charlene to come share our first scripture lesson from Psalm followed by Bobby sharing from Micah.
Good morning. A song of ascents. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forever.
Micah 6:6-8. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has told you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God.
Word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. I'd like to invite the new wine ringers to come forward. One of my favorite parts of United Methodist tradition is handbells. And unfortunately, fewer and fewer churches have them nowadays. But Sonoma has carried on, thanks to the dedication of many people. And Alice rang with the new wine ringers for many, many years. So I'm going to put some gloves on, and we're going to honor Alice. One second. All right. like to invite Beth, who I pre-warned just before our time together. And let's see. Is there someone else who would be comfortable in leading in the three-part round? Maggie?
Maggie or Charles, maybe?
She's hiding.
Oh, she's hiding.
No, okay, that's all right. We'll
Maybe
figure it
Charles?
out. Charles?
Come on, Charles. We used to sing together.
We
Pam,
need.
you wanna come?
Yeah,
Pam will do it.
Pam will do it. We got it. Or you can do it together. Yeah. So you'll get
We'll see
the
if we can play nice
smaller
together.
black hymnal, "The Faith We Sing," and it's on page 2174. And I think this mic can be used also.
Do you want to just stand next to it? Come over here with me, Pam.
All right. So we didn't rehearse this, so we'll. That's all right. So what does the Lord require of you based on Micah 6:8, which was read earlier? And we'll take a second and learn each part. And we'll start with what's called bases. It's not really a bass part, but it's called bases. So let's hear the line for the bass part. What does the Lord require of you? What does the Lord require of you? Again. What does the Lord require of you? What does the Lord require of you? Okay, then the middle part. Justice, kindness, walk humbly with your God. Again. Justice, kindness, walk humbly with your God. On the high part. To seek justice and love kindness and walk humbly with your God. To seek justice and love kindness and walk humbly with your God. All right, so now let's build this. Okay, so I'll start, or we can all start, but I'll start with what does the Lord require of you? So if you'd like to sing that line, join in. And then after maybe twice through, we'll add the second line. And after twice through of that, we'll add the third line. What do you want to sing?
I'll sing the
Or
third
it'll
line.
just turn into a melee.
All right, let's see what happens. Or just jump around. But we'll start with the first. Okay. Require of you, what does the Lord require of you? Again, what does the Lord require of you? What does the Lord require of you? You can do that. Just humbly with justice, kindness, walk humbly with your God. To seek justice, require of kindness. What does the Lord does the Lord require of you? What does the Lord require of you? What does the Lord require of you? What does the Lord require? One more time. What does the Lord require of you? What does the Lord require of you? All right, the buses are on the way. We're going to the studio. That was great. Well, fair enough. it's sing with a joyful noise. Ooh, this one's on. Today we gather to celebrate the life of a remarkable woman, Alice. She was not just a person that lived among us. She was a beacon of light, an embodiment of love, and a living testament to the verse of Micah 6:8, where it says, God has shown you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you but to act justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with God? Alice's life, from what I know, is a living example of these principles. She understood the essence of justice, mercy, and humility. In her interactions with others, she never sought recognition or praise. Instead, focused on lending a helping hand, on offering a shoulder to lean on, and on spreading kindness wherever she went. Now, I must admit that when I first came to Sonoma UMC a few years back, I was very intimidated by Alice. Even though I was significantly taller than her, she was a pillar of power. Amen. Amen. She had this tremendous sense of conviction, especially it came to how we walked in the way of Christ in the world, but she also had this tremendous sense of commitment. And as a first-year pastor, I was like, I don't know what to do with you. You're too much. But I quickly realized that I had no reason to be afraid. I quickly realized she wanted to partner and to collaborate and to imagine and to create. She recognized that her and I and the whole congregation and broader Christendom, we were co-creators of the kingdom of God. I was tremendously blessed to minister with her in my early years. Alice's sense of justice was unwavering. She did stand up for the marginalized and those who couldn't stand up for themselves. Her heart held a special place for those forgotten by society, reminding us that justice is not just a concept, but it is an action. One way this was strongly manifested is in her work with Sonoma Valley Hospital. She served there as a volunteer, served on various committees and task forces over the years. And I know that no institution is perfect, but I'm getting feedback. But the most I ever saw Alice in a frenzy, upset, was around the hospital. Because she had access to some of the inner circles and could see when resources were being mismanaged. So she spoke up for those who were ill or injured. She spoke up for the caregivers, both professional and volunteers, that were giving their lives to help people, to make sure that those who had control of the resources were using them equitably and not just putting them in their own pockets. Which, if you're in that kind of meeting, that's not a popular stance to take. But she never gave up. She had a deep sense of justice, that we all deserve dignity, and our health is a huge part of being able to feel our dignity. Mercy also flowed from Alice's heart like a gentle stream. She didn't judge. Well, I mean, maybe like surface level, but she didn't deeply judge and wouldn't hold a grudge for too long. Maybe a few, but that's beyond me. And always, though, was willing to forgive and invite people into resurrection. So even when there was disagreement, that didn't mean relationship was broken. It can always come into new life. That is mercy. She understood that we are all imperfect beings, and it's our ability to show compassion that truly defines our humanity. This was seen in part in her dedication to the Heifer Project. So you see the poster boards, laminated posters around the room and on this tripod, and our little animals here. These represent this church's connection to an organization called Heifer International. And Heifer International, who's never heard of it? Okay, that's enough for me to keep talking about it. Okay. Heifer International is a group that works to provide, they started providing livestock for communities around the world that were in need of sustenance and some way of providing an income. So at the very beginning of it, they would ship cattle out of a port in San Francisco and ship it across the world to Asia and Africa. Well, and it turns out that wasn't a great formula. About half the cows died on the way. So they've adjusted their business model over the years. But now they provide not only cattle, but sheep, chickens, fish ponds and fish setups so they can breed fish. They provide community wells. They provide community ovens. They provide education for young women. All sorts of things to help communities be able to be self-sustaining. And Alice participated with this ministry and invited this congregation to participate in this ministry. And the first poster was in 1978. And each one of the posters represents $5,000. And as we raise money, we continue to fill up the poster and color it in. This is our current one, number 13. And in a moment, we'll have an opportunity for you to donate to the Heifer Project in memory of Alice. This is an example of mercy. Now, she did travel around the world a lot, so she may have met some of the people that things got to, but there's many that she never did. But that didn't matter. So that takes us to our third point, her humility. She never sought the spotlight. She was radiant in her love, walked with grace, showing us that greatness is not measured by accomplishment, but by the depth of our humility and our willingness to serve. Now, Alice served probably 4 times on every committee in this church. She was here more than I was as the pastor. That may reflect on me, though. Because she cared about ministry. And actually, I'm going to go beyond that to say she cared about ministry. She was a minister of the gospel. And she never touted it. She never attempted to be holier than thou and never sought recognition. But today, like it or not, Alice, we're celebrating you. Micah 6:8 encapsulates her life, a life that mirrored the very essence of that verse. She embodied what it means to love God and to love our neighbor as ourselves. In addition to these attributes in Micah, she also embodied creativity. The banners in the room made by her, or she participated in their creation. Her quilts and cross-stitch, which you'll see in the reception, made by her. She loved music, but it didn't matter if it was just fun to sing or sounded pretty. She really cared about the words of the music. and recognized that there is theology. This is our attempt to explain, to connect with God, something bigger than us. For her, music was a devotion, and she rang in the handbells with us for years. And I know that the vibrations of these brass bells helped the angels to carry her to glory. Creativity is crucial. It helps us to be human. That's one lesson I hope that each one gathered can take. And we may mourn a physical absent, but let us not forgive the legacy that she leaves. Let us carry forward her commitment to justice, her capacity of mercy, and her embodiment of humility and her passion for creativity. Dear child of God, may your soul find eternal peace, and your example guide us as we strive to do better, to do justly, to love mercy, and walk humbly. Amen. This time we're going to begin a period of witness. And this is an invitation for family and friends to share any memories or that they have of Alice, any blessings they wish to offer her or her family. And we'll begin this time with Carol.
It's hard to do this, but and the reason we picked this picture of her, might be a little outdated, but she's happy, and you can see she's happy. Well, she looks happy in it, and she's not in pain there. So I think that's a big part of it. She's always felt younger than what her age was, and so I think she probably felt the age she was in this picture at least until she was 91 and a half. So the last half year has been more difficult for her, but until then she always felt a lot younger, which enabled her to do what she could do, or what she did do. So when you feel young, you can do it. Right? So, but it was a good picture of her. And like I said, there's so much to say about her life, and Matt touched on some, but certainly faith did play a big part, just like it did in my dad's life. She was raised Presbyterian. I think she said that in her autobiography. Her pastor was Mr. Emmons, and Presbyterians, as you know, they stay in the same church for a longer time at least. So he was her pastor for her whole life, and so he was the one who married my mom and dad, or performed the ceremony. And his wife, so Mrs. Emmons, had been raised Methodist, but had married the Presbyterian minister. So when she was at mom and dad's wedding, her comment after they got married, who mom at Presbyterian married a Methodist minister, was tit for tat. So because that was you exchanged it. So but besides that, the church was always a touchstone for mom. She and dad that's what they did together. They obviously spent a lot of time in churches, and they made friends there. And so even though mom knew that she'd have to move in a few years, she still made friends, and that could be a difficult thing. If you know you're just going to be there 3 or 4 years, why make the effort? But she did that because she knew they were worth keeping, and they're here. So, but mom and dad were there together, and that's what I think helped tide them through everything.
Carol, could you pull the mic towards your mouth?
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. But also is the community you build in a church, and the communities that they built together for their first 30 years here together was you. And so that's why those first 30 years, why she stayed here. Big part of the reason why Greg and I did not move her to Virginia when my dad died was because she had a community here, and that is you. And we can't thank you enough. And she certainly felt a part of it. You sustained her in times when she needed it. And then for the next dozen years after my dad died, for sure. So it's been a community that's been going for 40 years now. So to describe her faith isn't easy, but I like to think of it that on that Mary Martha spectrum, that she probably falls more towards Martha, but you know, as she's stitching though, she's listening. So there's Mary in there too. But she certainly liked to do things. That was what she did. I mean, she had to be doing something, and that was another hard part. When she couldn't see anymore, she had a hard time hearing. You can't do anything. And so she was struggling with that at the end, but she did it her whole life, was doing things. She was a giver. But like Matt said, she didn't want to be praised. That was not something she did, but she did praise others. And Paul pointed out what others did. The quilt that is in this room was made by two friends of her, Polly and Nancy. Nancy always made better points, and she always said that and pointed it out, that Nancy's points were always better. So I don't know if I could tell a difference, but she could. There we go. And one of the notes I did receive, it said that she was very strict and stern, and some of our family members would agree with that. But also underneath that she was a softie. So you could, if you knew what to say, you know, you'd get the cookie in the end, right? But she did think following rules was important, and so sometimes if you fell from that, then you got a little talking to, but again, it wasn't like you were banned, you just got a talking to, so. But she was not a flowery speaker. She said the least possible and to get her point across. And so sometimes that came across as short, but she didn't want to be talking as part of it. But she was a good listener, and she kept many secrets, and many secrets I'm sure died with her, so don't worry. Because she wasn't a gossip, and that certainly fell in, befit her role as a wife as a pastor. And note, it is a wife of a pastor, not a pastor's wife. She was never going to be that apostrophe S. So that's very important, and she probably told all of you that many times. But she did speak because as the president of the hospital auxiliary, as president of UMW, she had to have done it at some point, but she never liked to. She really did prefer to be on the other side, serving whatever was needed, even if it was in her own way. And so while she might not have been creative with words, she definitely was creative with crafts and her music too. So she sang in many groups, not only in the church, but also in the local community groups, and of course played bells. But then also she funneled her creativity into her crafts. And she painted. She always took watercolor classes and loved that, but she also did oil and acrylic. And I remember when we were in New York, she took classes there, and so we had lots of acrylics around the apartment there. Made it colorful at least, so. But then she got into fabric arts. She always sewed, so we always had homemade clothes, and she sewed for other people. She taught people to sew, and so if you asked her to teach, for her to teach you, she would. But then, and she made one quilt before in the 60s maybe sometime. It wasn't until she came to Sonoma that quilting really became a passion of hers. And I mean, where she had stacks and stacks and stacks of cloth. And so she finally got rid of, gradually got rid of it all, but you never get rid of quilt fabric, right? So it's still around. And when she was grieving, because she didn't feel as she could speak her grief, she made things. When her father died in the 70s, she did what I call instant batik. It was for this church in San Jose, and it was this a long banner, but it was a batiqued one, but I call it instant because you did it section by section, melted crayons and put the color on it in each section, and then ironed each section, and it ended up being one of these long ones that would hang in front of the front of the sanctuary. And it was of God or one of those dead white guys, pointing his finger at something with creating. And he had all creation there with all the animals coming out and everything the Bible then. So it was a fascinating piece, but it was 50 years ago. I tried to get it to have hang in here, and they couldn't find it. So, but 50 years of a cotton, who knows what had happened to it. But it was, so I can think of it any way that I want, since no one knows what it looks like. So, it was amazing to watch her create that. And then, so when my own dad died, so he died in June. That Christmas, Greg and I received a queen-size quilt. So so completely done. You know, she did that one probably by hand and did all the hand stitching. So in 6 months, a whole quilt came out, and that's how she expressed grief, which was amazing also. So it's a different type of speaking, I suppose. And the ideas from her quilts, or any of the projects, came from anywhere. Some of them are commissioned, as Matt knows. He said, "Oh, I saw this, Alice. Can you do something with this?" And voila, there's a little triptych there. But then one of when I took her to Iceland on her 86th birthday, that was something on her bucket list, which I never knew about. So we just did it then. And besides chasing buses there, we also attended a Brahms concert. Brahms was one of my dad's favorite things, so that was appropriate for her she knew what was being played, and so we got into the concert. And in the front of the concert room, there was an ironwork of some sort of an interesting pattern, and she goes, "Oh, that would make a nice quilt pattern." So she jotted it, drew it how she remembered on either her program or a piece of paper she had in her purse. And again, 6 weeks after we got back, she had a set of placemats that were made with this pattern that she remembered. So she can take something just by looking at it and create. And then most of those things she did, though, she gave away. So a lot of things, I'm looking through her books of quilts she made, and I don't know half of them because she made them and then someone else got them. Or one of them even said, "Yeah, I made this. It was a picture of my grandmother in a fancy hat, but I didn't like it, so I gave it to Goodwill." So I was like, there it goes, out the door. Which is fine because she had a lot of creativity and she wanted to give it out. But they were made with love, so all these people are receiving things that love is embedded in them. And something else about the quilts, I've flown out of my head. So again, Mom is known for doing things right now, at least as soon as she possibly could. She also didn't have a lot of willpower. So, and especially when it came to chocolate. So Megan, this is, yeah. So one Christmas, everybody got one of those big bars of chocolate in their stocking. And we talked about it a couple meals later, and she said, mine's all gone already. I have no willpower, so I ate it all up. And she was so pleased with herself for solving this problem of her with no willpower. How did she eat it up? It's like, everybody was silent for a minute, and then it's like, you burst out laughing. Because, I mean, what else can you do? Anyway, the chocolate was gone, and that was fine. But it was incredible. So in perspective, lots of things did get done because she did want to do things right away. Jams were made, meetings were organized, bills were paid on time, trips were planned, and everything happened how it's supposed to, I guess, because she did do things right away. So sometimes it has an advantage. So after college, she started teaching, and she was a teacher for a short time in New Jersey, and then after a few years in California, she taught again in California. So I always feel once a teacher, always a teacher, because she liked to have, if people asked her something and she knew about it at least, she didn't mind passing on that knowledge. She didn't try to keep things to herself. If knowledge was there, it was there to pass on. And of course, she taught Sunday school in every church she had, so that's one way she continued teaching. She taught one of her African mission was to teach sewing to people there. And she taught sewing, again, to many people who came and asked her, "Can I learn how to do what you do?" and she gave them fabric from her stash. So, but not only teaching, she also didn't mind being a student. And so that's how we learn, too, that learning is a lifelong thing. You don't stop learning. On all of our family trips, they were usually something, we learned something. We go to, the Southwest and we learn about the Anasazi and the Grand Canyon, and visit all these different monuments. We learn about U.S. history. When we traveled across country, we learn about how to make cheese if you go to the right place. And so we learned about all different things, and that it was okay to want to learn even though we're old now. So she also taught me how to take people as they are. You might have felt like she judged you. There were some things she didn't like, and I thank all the men in this church who, if she asked you to take your hat off, you did. Thank you very much. But that she thought some things were right and some things were wrong. But she still took people as they were. One of her friends from teaching had a saltier vocabulary, I guess, than she did, but she still welcomed her. She knew that she was a good person underneath. She talked to her. They did a lot of things together. And this woman ran a horse place where you use horses for, well, not just a stable, but sanctuary. Thank you. And so she did a lot of things to help people that way. But she just had a saltier language, and Mom just, that was how she was, and so you just accept her that way. It doesn't mean she always understood them. So she still kept up with current events, even though they disturbed her at the end. And then she doesn't understand what's going on in the country right now, but maybe none of us do. So, but without getting into politics, she just kept her mind going with lots of things as much as she could. And I'm sure she thought she never did enough, but I think she did. She really hated not to be able to do those things. I tried to assure her that over her lifetime, she did plenty. And now it was time for us to do things for her. And I think when I hear the song, Well Done, with Jason Ingram, Matt Fuqua, and Josh Havens, I think of her. And their refrain is, well done, my good and faithful one. Welcome to the place where you belong. Well done, my beloved child. You have run the race, and now you are home. Welcome to the place you belong. Well done. So, Cameron or Trevor, do you want to come up? Together?
So I'm Cameron, her grandson, if everyone doesn't know me. When I was 6 months old, my grandma gave me my first taste of ice cream, and my life was forever changed. As a kid, my brother and I would travel to Sonoma for 2 weeks during the summer. One summer, I ride with a broken wrist and a soft cast, and my grandma took me to some of her friends at the hospital and got me a nice hard cast that was my favorite color, blue. Other summers, we went on elder hostel trips to Ashland, Oregon, and the Olympic Peninsula. We always had a packed schedule with lots of fun things to do in California. But I always looked forward to the relaxing nights at their house with a bowl of ice cream. We always got bigger bowls of ice cream at our grandparents' house. My grandma taught me lots of things. She taught me how to write the letter S the correct way. She taught me what the purpose of coasters are, and how you can truly love someone forever. One distinct memory I have of my grandparents is when our whole family was in a van. My grandpa was in the passenger seat, and my grandma sitting in the seat behind him. My grandma reached forward to get his attention, and he reached back, and they held hands for a good 10 minutes. They had been married for over 50 years at this point, and I could tell that she still enjoyed and cherished holding my grandpa's hand. I love you, Grandma, and I know you will be truly missed, and I hope you are with Grandpa again and hold his hand as much as you want.
I'm Trevor, her other grandson. Grandma would love seeing so many friends and loved ones here. Sonoma United Methodist Church held a strong sense of place and community. Some of my earliest memories involve singing Silent Night to candlelight in this very room. And I always took for granted that Grandma had made all the wall hangings behind the choir. As Mom mentioned, we always called her right away Alice. Dishes would be done before you could actually get thirds. Actually, the last time I saw her, we were having lunch after my run, and I said I'd do the dishes after my shower. I got out of the shower, and they were already done. This was just last June. Sunday's church attendance would be entered into the spreadsheet before the car engine had even cooled, and 12 months of baby quilts would be made by the end of April. You know the picture. Grandma was always thinking of others and wanted to do something right away. I'm sure she'd be wondering why we waited 2 whole weeks to celebrate her life. Having Alice Friesen as your grandma meant that life's milestones are defined in quilts. In elementary school, Grandma chose the theme, and my bed was covered in a spread of playful cats. In middle school, she must have asked me what I wanted because I slept under a quilted night sky of various star constellations. Actually, that one right there. Graduating from high school, I remember working on Grandma and Grandpa's computer to design a quilt, and she assembled with all the pieces from her closet. When I graduated from college, she asked me what quilt I wanted, and I designed one with all the icons of computer software I used. This has to be the only quilt in the world that has Firefox, Thunderbird, Ubuntu, and GIMP icons on it. When Megan and I got married, the quilt that Grandma spent months making was featured right behind the dessert spread, and when painting our bedrooms in our new house, we made sure to match the walls to the quilt. The last quilt that Grandma gave me was in December. It was a baby quilt for Paxton, who she was very happy to meet in last April. Each of these quilts is an expression of love, that love that Grandma had showed for not just me, the whole community, and the places that she was rooted in. Thank you all for coming and celebrating with us.
I want to add, their 70th wedding anniversary would be Monday, the 15th, so.
I'd like to take a moment if there's any others who'd like to share. Yeah, come on.
I'm very, very social.
This one's fresh.
I'm very social, but I'm not very good at this kind of thing. Oh yeah, I'm way shorter than the rest of the world. Finally, Alice got down to my height. I was like kind of excited about that. So growing up, I'm part of the Marshall clan. I'm the Gloucester side of the family. So growing up, my mom always spoke about her cousins from New Jersey and the adventures of them coming up to Massachusetts, or her family visiting them in New Jersey. Out of the many cousins my mom had, and she had many, she was very close to Alice, who was I thought was the youngest, but Carol has informed me Alice was not the youngest of the first cousins, but she was one of the younger ones. She was 5 years younger than my mom. As a young adult, I drove cross country, and my car window got smashed in San Francisco in front of a police station. And so I had a back window that I had to get repaired. I couldn't stay and leave it up like that. So I got to come back up to Sonoma, and I stayed with Alice and Claude, and I think Doug was still living there. And they were so unbelievably kind to me, while I had to try to find a specific window for dots in B210, and it was just like a lot of work. And I just learned so much about her, during that week that I stayed with them. So later, after my mom passed, I started coming out to Sonoma. I always kept in contact with her by phone and things like that, and I started coming out in 2012. So I think I've been coming out here for now 11 years, and we just did so many things. I would take her up to Glen Ellen. We would go to, we went to Point Reyes. We went to Bodogo Bay, Sebastopol. I mean, just all different places. And we would take these long rides and just talk about all the things that she did. And amazing stories of all her travels through Africa were just, it just really was like so enlightening for me. You know, her dedication and her determination and her values always left me in awe. Our conversations always revolved around the genealogy and the Marshall family that came here in 1637, and she provided me with copies of all the Book of Ancestors so that I can become a Mayflower person or whatever it's called. As a Massachusetts native, I had to travel to California to learn about my Mayflower heritage, which was interesting because she was the keeper of records, and every time I would come out, like if somebody died or whatever, she would like record it down in the ancestry books. Yeah, she's got everybody in there, and names of all the new grandchildren and everything. It was like, she was so dedicated to that. So when I was coming up this time, I was here in May, and I got to see her, and I had a great visit with her. But when I was crossing the Golden Gate Bridge, the memories of my rides to Sonoma brought me so much comfort. I was flooded with the thoughts of Alice and all of our many conversations and our hugs and our tears that we both shared of our losses. She was one of the first supporters when I lost my only child in 2015. Alice was just so supportive and so kind to me, and didn't expect me to stop crying, which 8 years later, I'm still gonna be crying. Don't get worried about me. I'm not suicidal or anything. I'm just gonna grieve forever. And Alice always understood that. And so I would let her, cry about Claude, and she would let me cry about Jordan, and then we would hug. And that's like one of my favorite memories of Alice. Thank you.
Deb?
I have a little something different to say about Alice. Alice was my adopted second mother because my mother died in 1994, and she told me that now she would make sure that I towed the line. She forced me to be a Sunday school teacher with her for 12 years when she and Claude were at our church the first time. And I remember I was trying to sneak out the back door because they were asking for volunteers. And she got me by the arm and said, "Oh, you're going to teach Sunday school with me." And I was like, okay. And I taught with her for 12 years. She taught me everything because she was a teacher. And she was not shy about telling you how to do it. And she taught me a lot of things. She used to make me persimmon cookies. And I would go and visit her in the mornings, and we would do puzzles, and she taught me how to needlepoint, and she taught me how to bake cookies, because I am not a baker. And she tried to teach me to quilt, and it was an epic fail. In fact, that was one of the only times she laughed herself silly, because it took weeks. I went every day for like weeks, and all I made was little placemats. So they were just flat. I mean, nothing. But she said, she was very kind about it. She patted my arm and said, "This is not your forte. You don't have to do that. That's okay." I remember she came to my house when I had my second child, and I was at home, and she and Claude came to visit. And I was like, "They're coming to my house?" And she came in, and I was mortified because my husband was drinking beer. And she said, "It's okay, a lot of people drink." And I was like, "Oh, thank you." Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. She kind of, when you guys said, "Oh, she's so sweet, and look at that nice." Well, here, let me do Alice for you. Here's Alice if she didn't like what you were doing. Here's if you did something or you said something stupid. She was good at that one too. And And then I got so close to her that I would hug her all the time. Well, when I first started hugging her, she was stiff as a board, and she said, "I don't like to be touched, and I don't like to be hugged." And I said, "Well, that's just too bad, because I'm going to hug you every time I see you." And I did, but we got very close because she was not shy about telling you how she felt about something and letting you know her opinion. And I appreciated that because I don't have a filter. So it was nice because I could talk to her and she would tell me exactly what she thought about everything. And she was a kind person. She wasn't flamboyant about it. Like you said, she didn't like everybody to know, but she did things for people all the time. And she used to volunteer me for stuff all the time because she knew I couldn't say no to her. And woe be to the person who moved her stuff. Don't touch my stuff. Don't touch her stuff. We made this giant paper mache ball that was made out of paper mache and chicken wire because it was the stone that they rolled in front of the tomb. Well, we were going to save it, so we rolled it and saved it. Well, someone threw the stone away. Ay, 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 ay. She was very upset. She made Claude build me a manger so that we could put a kid in it for our Christmas pageants. She came to Sunshine. She gave me a zillion things for Sunshine and helped me with the teaching because we have a nursery school here at our church, and she was very kind about that. She came and she taught me songs that she used when she was a teacher that we still sing at Sunshine today. So she made a lasting effect on people. And frankly, I just gotta say, I loved her grumpiness. It was wonderful because one time this lady came to church and she was dressed a little flamboyantly. And Alice didn't say anything because we were like staring. And she goes, and I'm sitting by her, and she sees me staring. She pinches the back of my arm and says, "Don't stare." So, and I was like, "Yes, ma'am." I stepped forward, and when we got out, we're in the icon room, and she goes, "Everybody's different." And that's all she said. She didn't say anything else. And you know what? I still use that today. When my kids start saying something, or the grandkids, I go, "They're just different. They're just different. Don't do it." And that's thanks to Alice. I will miss that woman so much.
It's probably okay for me. We met the Friesens. I met the Friesens, I guess, when I was about 5. Mr. Friesen and Mrs. Friesen came to Albany United Methodist Church, and my parents had 6 kids. And so they were always really busy, and they did all the Bible school and all the different things with Alice and Claude. They were always together. And the one thing that I really remember is that my parents, because they had 6 kids, they never had time to really have friends. And they were just always busy. My dad was always working. My mom with 6 kids at home was taking care of everything. And when the Friesens came to our church, they found out that my parents knew how to play pinochle. And I still haven't learned how to play that, and I've always wondered. But they would get together on Sunday nights after church in the evening and play pinochle at one of our homes, either our house or at their house. I think it probably happened more often at our house because with 6 kids, having to put them to bed was difficult. We would go to the Friesens, and my parents would have to carry 6 kids out of the house, up the stairs, down their stairs, up ours, to bedrooms, and that was really tough. But because both my parents were single child, we had no aunts or uncles, and we had no cousins. So we were not around a lot of grown people that much, except for the Friesens. And my mother would always call her, "Oh, Alice, will you do this? And Alice, will you do that?" And one day, I just never even thought about it, and I said, hey, Alice, could we do this or something? She goes, what? You don't call me Alice. I'm Mrs. Friesen to you. And I thought, whoa. Well, I'll tell you, I guess we were just talking about it, but I think it was 4 years ago when my father passed away. Alice did come to my father's funeral, and she said to me, you know, Janet, you can call me Alice now. And I said, are you kidding me? You are Mrs. Friesen forever.
I do hope that we all gather in the Isaac Owen room following the service to keep on telling stories. I'd like us, though, in this time to move to a tradition that Alice began, as far as I am aware. Once a month, on the second Sunday of each month, we receive an offering for Heifer International, which I spoke about earlier. We're pretty early on in this campaign.
So like I said, each poster is $5,000. We're here. Bobby, what's the count?
112.
Yeah, about 1,200, yeah. So we got a ways to go. Yeah. And it's always an exciting moment for the congregation when we can give that gift.
It's 1,000.
I said
1,012.
Well,
Because it's $5,000.
okay. Either way, we're here. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to see if we can do this as quickly as we can, because I know there's a lot of us. But if you would like to make a donation to Heifer Project, we're going to do this just like we do it on Sunday mornings. You can come forward and place your donation in these baskets. And if you'd like to do it in celebration of Alice, or if something else that's exciting and a blessing in your life, say it into the microphone and then move quickly aside. So I invite you to line up if you'd like to make an offering to Heifer International. And get right up on the mic.
Celebration of Alice's life. For Alice.
Love you, Alice.
I work at Sonoma Valley Hospital, and Alice's commitment inspired us.
Praise God.
She was a love to work with. Thank you.
This is for Alice. Alice was a volunteer at the hospital and worked under me, and she was a joy. She was wonderful. Thank you.
For Alice. Alice, thank you for roping me into many different things here at church.
Playing bells with Alice and Claude.
I'm a quilter friend, and blessings to Alice and Claude.
Alice, we were part of the ministerial family.
For Alice.
For another Alice, my mother, Alice Biddle, who just passed away too.
To Alice from Frank.
For Alice, of course, and also her spoon. She'll know what that means. She yelled at me, called me 8 o'clock in the morning one time because I accidentally took her spoon home. So this is for Alice, always in her spoon.
For Alice, a wonderful friend. We laughed so much and we had so much fun. And since she was so genuine, what a moral compass. Amazing woman.
This is for Alice, and it's from Jeremy and Kelly, who were Alice's students, and also on behalf of Pat, who also got her arm twisted to become a Sunday school teacher not long after joining the church.
For all the Alices out there and Alice.
for Alice, one for my stepsister who had a birthday a few days ago, and one for my sister-in-law who has a birthday on Tuesday.
I have no idea who I'm going to ask now when I want to move something from the church.
Alice got very small at the end, but only physically.
For Alice.
I'll miss your sparkly blue eyes.
For Alice's creativity.
For Alice, and thanks for Sonoma Church.
For Allison and Thanksgiving for the hundreds of baby quilts she donated to Fish.
Yes.
And this is for Alice, and teaching me all about the heifer thing when I first came out in 2012. We went to the first one, I went to the meeting. She took me down to the meeting, so I got to learn all about it. It's great.
Great God, I pray your blessing on these gifts, that they take Alice's spirit of service and compassion throughout the world, helping individuals and communities to thrive. Amen. Our next hymn is found on page 707 in the blue hymnal, Hymn of Promise. And I think I'm correct in saying this actually was her favorite hymn in the hymnal. And I teased her about it some, because it's a little cheesy. But again, as I referenced early, she, yeah, you're talking about what? Leave me alone up here. She did pay attention to the lyrics. And the theme of this is the essence of the Christian experience, and that is resurrection. So I invite you to join in singing Hymn and Promise, and stand as you are willing and able, and sing lustily and with good courage. Page 707. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who have trespassed against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Please be seated. The commendation, well, that's a word that we don't usually use in our day-to-day lives. But what it is, it recognizes what a tremendous gift has been bestowed to us in the life and light of Alice. And it also acknowledges now we give that gift fully back to God's care. God of us all, your love never ends. When all else fails, you still our God. We pray to you for one another in our need and for all, anywhere, who mourn with us this day. To those who doubt, give light. To those who are weak, strength. To those who have sinned, mercy. To those who are in sorrow, peace. Keep true in us the love with which we hold one another. Great God, receive Alice into your arms of mercy. Raise her up with all your people. Receive us also and raise us into a new life. Help us so to love and serve you in this world that we may enter into your joy in the world to come. Into your hands, O merciful Savior, we commend your servant Alice. Acknowledge, we humbly beseech you, a sheep of your own fold, a lamb of your own flock. Receive Alice into the arms of your mercy, into the blessed rest of everlasting peace, and into the glorious company of the saints of light. Amen. And I invite you to remain seated for our closing hymn. In the Faith We Sing, page 2008, Let All Things Now Living. Let all things now living, a song of thanksgiving to God the Creator, triumphantly raise, who fashioned and made us, protected and stayed us, who guides us and leads us to the end of our days. God's banners fly o'er us, God's light goes before us. In forth in the night, till shadows have vanished and darkness is banished, as forward we travel from light into light. The law enforces the stars in their courses, and sun in its orbit obediently shine. The hills and the mountains, the rivers and fountains, the deeps of the ocean proclaim the divine. We too should be voicing our love and rejoicing with glad adoration, a song let us raise till shall. No doubt. Yeah. Following our benediction, I invite you to remain for the postlude. When the postlude is over, I ask that to allow the family to exit into the fellowship hall first, and then let us all go and continue this celebration. But Beloved of God, you know this, and I know this. You have been blessed to share part of your life journey with Alice, even if it was for a second, even if it was for your entire life. You witnessed justice, you witnessed mercy, you witnessed humility. Take the best parts of it and the grumpy parts, because sometimes the world just needs to hear it. May God bless you and yours today and the days to come. And God bless Alice.